You're listening to the Renegade Blitz podcast, a podcast for Steelers fans by Steelers fans. Follow us on Twitter at Renegade Blitz, read articles on renegadeblitz.com, and like us on Facebook. And welcome back to the Renegade Blitz podcast. I'm Polk, joined by Chris Ward and Guthrie Rasmussen, and a special guest, as we've done on the previous recap podcast. We have another RenegadeBlitz.com writer. Please welcome Jimmy Spizzirri. He writes the recaps and a host of other miscellaneous articles for the RenegadeBlitz.com. Jimmy, glad to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
So, Jimmy, what type of articles, just to be more clear about it, have you written for the RenegadeBlitz.com, and how did you get involved with us?
Yeah, so to start, how I got involved with you guys, I had followed the Twitter account probably for like 1.5, 2 years, always followed the content, always liked the quick updates and everything. And then once I saw you guys launch the website, I reached out and I was curious to see if I was, able to contribute in some way. I attend Northern Illinois University, majoring in journalism there. So I thought, this would be a perfect way to kind of perfect my craft a little bit, write for a team that I love and a website that seemed like it was really on its way to taking off. So I reached out. I've been welcomed in by you guys, been able to write, put out my work, and it's been a really good experience for me so far. And kind of as you said earlier, I've been writing a lot of the recaps, then just a lot of like in between, predictions, keys to victory, whatever is needed for any given week. I've been trying to fill in and, do my best for the website.
Yes, part of the contingent of Mac writers on the staff here as well. We have Guthrie, Bowling Green, Luke, Miami University product, and of course me and Chris, we just represent Point Park.
Was it NIA or whatever
NAIA,
conference we're in?
And last week with Max, St. Francis. So we got a couple D1s, couple of NAIAs, and it's a welcome contingent of writers here. Of course, we always stress this. If you want to write for the RenegadeBlitz.com, just ask. DM us, and Chris will get you set up on there. You can write about anything you want. You want to write the recaps. You want to have a little bit of film study, fantasy football. Draft season's coming up. If you can do cap stuff or at least have any predictions on the free agency market for the Steelers, by all means, come on down. Any help is appreciated. But guys, before we get to the game, which is, of course, very eventful, we have to talk a little bit about a loss in another way, really. Before the game, former Steeler and Hall of Famer Kevin Greene passed away at the age of 58. Greene played from 1985 to 1999 after being drafted in the 5th round with the 113th pick out of Auburn by the Los Angeles Rams. He is third all-time in sacks with 160. 35 and a half of them came in his 3 years as a Steeler from 1993 to 1995. Only Bruce Smith and Reggie White have accumulated more sacks. Despite spending 8 seasons with the Rams, 1 season with San Francisco, and 3 seasons each with Pittsburgh and Carolina, he chose to be inducted into the Hall of Fame as a Steeler. He called playing for the Steelers the time of his life. He left the franchise because of salary cap constraints and a decision to go younger. Despite that, he never held it against the organization and always held the Steelers in high regard. Greene was survived by his wife Tara, his son Gavin, and his daughter Gabriella. The Pro Bowl rosters was announced for the NFL, and Pittsburgh is well represented, of course, even with things going a little topsy-turvy over their last 3 weeks. Where the Steelers are well represented in the Pro Bowl, which won't be played this year. They have 5 players in there with Marquise Pouncey, David DeCastro, Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, of course, and Minkah Fitzpatrick. What are your thoughts on the Steelers' representation in the Pro Bowl?
Yeah, I thought, I thought that Steelers got their much deserved representation, being an 11-3 team. They definitely deserve to, have those guys in the Pro Bowl or what would be the Pro Bowl. I was surprised by a couple names in there, especially the offensive linemen. over the past few years, I think we can all agree on that Pouncey's play has declined a little bit. DeCastro's play, at least this year, has declined a little bit. So those are more so kind of the popular names that I think a lot of fans saw. And, if you're not too educated on O-line play, then you might just kind of throw a vote there, for those two guys. And I thought even more notably were a couple of the omissions. Mike Hilton at corner was definitely a big one there. I thought Joe Hayden at corner also had potential to make the Pro Bowl there. So, I'm glad the Steelers got the representation. I'm sure that there are a few guys who are a little upset about it too, but
Yeah, I completely agree. The offensive line guys, I just don't think they have any business to kind of be on the list this year. And not a shot at them. I just don't think the whole offensive line as a whole really has been up to par to their recent years. Another guy that I agree with, Mike Hilton. I think also Stephon Tuitt, Bud Dupree, even though he got hurt, I still think before that he was having kind of a Pro Bowl like year. He still probably could have made it. He's probably a game or two off. But other than that, I think I'm happy with who we see on the list. I think Ben Roethlisberger, if he didn't have this skid he's had these last couple of games, I definitely think he would have a chance to be on there. Although there's some very good guys in the AFC this year, so I'm going to probably retract that statement. But any other year, I think Ben probably would have a higher spot on this list. But yeah, I think it's a pretty solid list this year, and I think they're going to be happy they're not going to have to play in that game anyway.
Chris?
Yeah, I agree with what Jimmy and Guthrie said. I'm not too sure how Pouncey and DeCastro made the Pro Bowl. I guess based off their name or something. But like Jimmy mentioned, Pouncey hasn't been the same the last couple of years, and DeCastro, especially this year. I'm not sure if he's dealing with injury or whatever, but he just doesn't seem like the player that he once was. I agree with Minka, at safety, and then obviously T.J. Watt and Hayward deserves to make the Pro Bowl also. Kind of to it, I was a little bit surprised. He has 8 sacks this year, but it's kind of tough. There's a lot of good defensive linemen, like DeForest Buckner didn't even get named as a defensive tackle for the Pro Bowl, and then Bud Dupree also. He had 8 sacks, and maybe the injury played a role, but I know on Instagram he kind of expressed like his frustration with it. I know he made a comment on it and stuff, but other than that, I thought they got it pretty much right.
Yeah, you guys pretty much touched on it all. Bud Dupree is a glaring omission. Mike Hilton, I can understand that as well, but also it's just that I don't know if in the Pro Bowl sense that they really kind of focus on cornerbacks that are primarily known for playing a certain position on the field that's designated by a formation. I'm pretty sure with all-star games like that, they kind of really don't have those designations, but if they did have those special, kind of like positions, I'm pretty sure that they would have had Mike Hilton on there. Yes, the offensive line is kind of strange with how we've dissected them really over the past 3 weeks to most of the season, really, but you have to remember that these are kind of fan votes, so the big names, the names that the Steelers Twitter page kind of highlights out there, and especially with how big the fan base of the Steelers is, they're going to get their names out there a little bit more probably than most teams out there. So it is what it is. The Pro Bowl kind of is, especially when it's not being played, super meaningless this year. All pro teams are probably more understanding of who deserves the honor versus who doesn't. But again, congratulations to those 5 guys. Let's get to the game, and Muppet Night Football, especially in that first half, kind of was really a fitting term for Steelers versus Bengals. The final score was 27-17 Bengals, and it was highlighted by the Bengals getting out to a 17-0 lead to go into the first half. And this was a game that I think just about every football fan with a brain, and some without it, would have thought that the Steelers are going to win this game, and it didn't happen. This was a game that looked like it was going to slate the Steelers as the AFC North champions, and now the door is open for the Cleveland Browns to sneak their way to the AFC North title. And Guys, what are your thoughts on the predicament that the Steelers have gotten themselves into? And again, we'll start the honors with our guest.
Yeah, I mean, the Steelers definitely got themselves into a predicament, as you said now, based off of that performance and what lies ahead these next 2 weeks. Speaking specifically to the AFC North, Cleveland's going to play New York, the Jets next week, and you can pencil that in as a win. You know, more of even sure of a win than the Steelers were over Cincinnati. And, Steelers have a tough game against Indianapolis next week. You know, they're a hot team. They're 10-4. They, they definitely are playing their best football of the year right now. So Steelers are going to need to win that game, or else, there's a sort of that second playoff game before the playoffs even start, at Cleveland week 17. So Steelers definitely need to hopefully find a way against Indianapolis. Obviously got to play more like the second half than the first half, as they did in Cincinnati. But, they got themselves in a position that realistically they should not have been in.
I don't even know if that's a given, considered that the Jets can't even tank right. So, yeah.
That is true. Now, they did play a good game against LA.
Yeah, I can't believe the Steelers lost to this Bengals team. I mean, they're, horrendous, obviously, coming into it. They were 2-10-1. They had their third string quarterback and Finley starting. And I just know the Steelers came out flat, spotted them 17 points, and really, they're -3 in turnover differential. So, I mean, really, that's the game right there. And I don't know how they're going to rebound, really, especially against this Colts team that, like Jimmy mentioned, like they're playing great football right now on both sides of the ball. And I think they might win this game, but, I give them better odds. I'm a little worried about Cleveland in Week 17 at Cleveland, but if they lose to the Colts at home, I think they might just lose out the rest of the way.
And Chris, we were basically bamboozled by our guest, Tyler Dragon. Again, we thank him for coming on there, but it's just like, I don't know what happened. That Cincinnati team was just different last night.
Yeah, he pretty much flat out said, like, this Bengals team is not good, and they're looking forward to, like, pretty much 2021 and getting their, like, new tackle or pass rusher at number 3 overall or whatever, what they were slated to pick in the next draft. So, yeah, like, he wasn't impressed with what the Bengals were doing, and, they weren't scoring a lot of points, and, they somehow scored 24 points against the Steelers and win.
We'll talk to the man out in Bengal land, Guthrie Rasmussen.
Yeah, it was such a horrible loss. It's just when the Steelers start like that, you get that pit in your stomach, or it's going to be a long game, especially when they had punt after punt after punt. It was insane. The biggest difference, I think, for the Bengals and Steelers last night was just kind of Ryan Finley was out there having fun. It looked like you could always see him smiling, which was kind of it was kind of good to see even after being hit. You could just tell he was the better quarterback that night. Steelers were definitely caught off guard by his running ability, and it sucks, but once again, it's not the end of the world. I'm kind of hitting panic mode, of course. As I have since our first loss, just because of how we looked. But we're in the playoffs. We're not fighting for a playoff spot, but we definitely need to right the ship here and get some momentum going into the playoffs.
Yeah, and the first play of the game was a play-action pass, which is a nice little wrinkle. First play of the game, why not? Why not establish play-action? And it was underthrown badly and almost picked off to begin the game. Really, the Bengals should have had 4 picks, not just the one they came away with. And what's your thoughts on the play calling early on? It was clearly not the design by Randy Fichtner that was the issue. It was Ben Roethlisberger. Do you guys agree with that?
Yep. Yeah, I'll agree with that. Randy, I didn't really have any issues with his play calling. Ben was just off. He wasn't seeing the field well, and a lot of ill-advised passes. Overthrowing, underthrowing. Just off target. Really, entire first half, and he missed bad on that first deep pass to James Washington. When you're talking about on the first play, or are you talking about the other one? He had so many.
I don't even remember who it was to. All I remember is seeing a Bengal have it right in the
breadbasket
and dropped.
Okay, that was the first. That was the first play with James Watt. It was kind of funny. It was similar to his interception he threw against Buffalo, the week prior, with same side, right sidelines, and it was underthrown.
Yeah, kind of as Chris touched on, definitely didn't really have any problems with the play calling last night. It did come down to execution. The play action, the Steelers are one of the, teams who really don't use it, as much as the rest of the league. But it definitely opened up some opportunities for Ben to move the ball down the field and for the Steelers offense to get going. And he just wasn't able to do it. I like the first play call, just speaking specifically to that play. I love it because Cincinnati's coming in knowing that the Steelers are trying to get this run game figured out. And, that's an emphasis when you're playing a 2-10-1 football team, that you're going to try to fix up a couple things that, you need some working on. And so they definitely caught him, they caught him with the play action. It looked like it was there. Ben just missed. I mean, as we saw, especially in the first half, that was just one of many that Ben missed, whether it was not putting the ball in the right spot or just completely misreading coverages. It all came down to execution. One positive would be that, the run game did get going a little bit, so I would say that Fichtner had a nice game. He kept a balanced approach, even when down 17, it was still, an even distribution of passing plays and calling some run plays, but just definitely a disappointing performance from Ben. And, that first throw kind of set the tone for, as Guthrie said earlier, you kind of get that pit in your stomach where it's like, you're excited for the game to start. You see Ben going deep, you kind of get excited on that first play, and then all of a sudden you're let down like, wow, that should have been a turnover and sign of things to come for, last night for the Steelers.
Guthrie, before I get on to you right now, I want to ask you this because you were working on the rundown with me, and you did mention that you believe that Fichtner should be fired like after this game, I believe, in the immediate aftermath. I want to get your take about 24 hours after the game would have started as we record this.
Exactly. Emotions were very high. Let's just put it that way. I'm a very emotional person in that way. I don't know. I still think the position, like some positions on this organization, all positions really need to be looked at kind of this offseason. Will that happen? Probably not. Just because the Steelers are a very family organization. I think we said this last week. Guys are there for years, and they're all doing very solid. But maybe the offensive line needs to be addressed. Like the coaching needs to be addressed. Players need to be addressed. I don't know. I mean, I get what you guys are saying. Like a lot of that's on Ben. Like Randy is dialing up some plays that should get people open. It just didn't look like, Ben was executing them very well.
Go ahead.
I agree with Guthrie. I mean, I'll give Randy some credit. Like he did call a pretty good game yesterday, but I still don't think he's like the long-term answer. I think if you guys follow Warren Sharp football, I don't know. He follows, watches the film and stuff. And he made a tweet, basically saying how, he's not a big fan of Randy and he lacks creativity and everything. I don't know at what point of the game, he was mentioning, but I kind of agree. You see some of these other offenses, just like, Baltimore or Cleveland or what they do in Kansas City is just like, they're so much more dynamic. And you sometimes don't see that. Well, a lot of times this year, really, but it was better yesterday. I'll give him that.
Yeah, there was I remember a play that Ben kind of had like a crossing route. I'd like to call it, for me being a Madden head, I call it a dagger route effectively. And Guthrie, you understand that, it's like a crossing route where if you throw it correctly, basically all you have to run up to the corner and it's a touchdown more often than not, as long as the safety's not over. So I don't know what happened with that. Ben just missed it. And you guys, there's been so much talk, and you guys open it up a little bit. A lot of people open it up on Twitter with Ben basically saying that I'm going to commit to the rest of this contract for the Steelers. There's questions of, should they just straight up cut Ben Roethlisberger, or should they restructure that contract? But I do want to let you know, with the restructuring rules, you're effectively asking for another year of Ben Roethlisberger after the contract restructuring. So, for example, his cap hit is $41 million next year, and I'm not a capologist, but say if they can, we're just gonna put a number out there that would be nice, I guess. Say they cut that number down, Ben agrees to take a pay cut to $10 million. Would you guys want that, or would you like to see Roethlisberger cut outright?
I would never say cut him, just out of respect to him. But it's just, I don't know. I think if Ben comes back, we stick with him for another year, but definitely we need to address the quarterback position. Sorry if I cut you off.
No, but
Jimmy.
To think about that, because if it came down to, like, if cutting Ben Roethlisberger was the difference between, say, Bud Dupree still being here, even coming off knee surgery, or not, if you were willing to put a gamble out there, would you take that?
Oh, man, it's a really tough choice. If Ben was going out on his own terms, like he was just done, yeah, I would say so. Just to start kind of the rebuild process. And, it's going to have to happen soon anyway. I'm not discounting what Ben's done his entire career, what he's done for the season, most of the season. But, if this trend keeps going downward, the stock keeps going down, then yeah, I would say so.
This may come off as sort of a non-answer, but I do believe, we have a minimum of 3 games left this year. 3 weeks ago, if we were having this conversation, we would all be saying, absolutely, we want Ben back. We don't care how much he's making next year. We'll take him. He's the quarterback of our football team. Now 3 weeks later, we see sort of a decline, wondering, is he injured? What's going on? He just doesn't have it anymore. So I think my answer will come probably at the end of the year, but I also think it is important to sort of take things in stride a little bit. For 11 weeks, he was an above average quarterback in the NFL. And, these past 3 weeks, he's been anything but that. But I do believe that, there is still some time to right the ship, before we make any like huge decisions about next year. But if it does continue, if this trend continues, I would definitely be willing to move on. This defense is too talented to, have a subpar quarterback trying just to scrape out any points, that he can. Because, yesterday, the offense turned the ball over and 17 points came off of those turnovers. So only 7 points allowed by that defense, not off of a turnover. When you have that good of a team, you need to put a guy, in there who can just not lose you a game. And that's what Ben has been doing these past 3 weeks. Maybe you take a $20 million cap hit if you cut him, whatever that may be. That's still $20 million that you can use, to that next quarterback or, to another defensive starter.
Yeah, I would be pretty surprised if they cut him just outright, just because what all Ben's done and the way Ben is, like, he would take that really bad, and like there'll be some friction with the organization. I think if they lose out and like say he continues to play bad, like he might just walk out on his own, because he's continuously said, if like I can't play, like I won't play anymore. Pretty much, I won't let the team down if I can't be effective. So I agree with what Jimmy said. Kind of wait and see these next 3 games. But I'll be honest. The first half against the Bengals, probably for the first time ever, I thought Ben Roethlisberger is done, and I've never had that thought before. But like he seriously could be done. And now, to his credit, he did play better in the second half. He could have got picked off there by William Jackson III, and he somehow dropped the ball. But we'll have to wait and see. But the last 2 games, especially, have been really bad for Roethlisberger. And maybe he's dealing with an injury. I don't know, but he wasn't playing like that, obviously, early in the season.
Yeah, it was so bad at one point. Mason Rudolph was trending. There was even tweets coming from sources like at the game.
Reporters at the game. Yeah.
Like saying Ben Roethlisberger's in sweats. Earlier, our friend Tyler Dragon, we talked to him in the past couple of days, was saying that Ben Roethlisberger is in sweats and Mason Rudolph is warming up. Now, ESPN never showed that, so I'm not exactly sure with that, but I will buy it from people who are in the stadium that said that Mason Rudolph was warming up, or at least looked like he was going to do something in that game. He didn't, and it probably was, even with how Ben played and how it ended up with the Steelers, the right decision. So, I want to talk about, of course, the hit heard round the world, from the dance seen round the world. Juju Smith-Schuster's dancing at the logo, it seemed that it kind of came at a high this week, especially with his comments in the media saying like he's going to continue being himself and doing that. Vonn Bell, after a suicide pass from Ben Roethlisberger, flat out laid him out, and I know that it's kind of like a cliche thing, but it kind of really, when we think of like what happened with Vontaze Burfict hitting Antonio Brown, is this hit a tone changer in the Steelers-Bengals rivalry, especially with Joe Burrow in the weights?
I mean, honestly, kind of yes. I mean, this based off of what I saw from the Steelers yesterday, it just obviously not looking too good. You know, what's to say if Ben walks away this year, this play continues to decline next year, and the Bengals have a healthy Joe Burrow and a whole other offseason to, reload and get better, get some more offensive line help. They could potentially, make some more noise in the AFC North. The Steelers could potentially take a back seat, but that was a very. I just thought it was kind of poetic. How that happened. I kind of expected it to happen after Juju continues to dance on opposing teams' logos. I just personally just think you don't need to do it. Just let your play do the talking. And not to bring up Claypool, but Claypool tweeted before the game. He says, "Hat and T-shirt game on Monday night. Give me that." And it's just kind of like that's the stuff that's just not needed. I've seen a couple players do it. Ebron's done it. Just let your play do the talking. Just don't give teams anything extra to want to beat you. And that's just kind of what happened. And that's just kind of in short, I think it's kind of definitely a tone changer. The Bengals fans, they got a lot to look forward to in Joe Burrow.
What about you, Jimmy?
I don't know if I necessarily subscribe to the belief that it's a tone changer in the rivalry, but it was definitely a statement. They came into that game 2-10-1, and they, after that hit, you knew that they were here to play football. This was not going to be a pushover. This wasn't going to be a get right game for the Steelers. They were here to win the game against their division rival. You kind of said it best. It was a suicide pass from Roethlisberger. I think a lot of attention's kind of been put on how Juju, did get hit hard. He lost the ball. He was put in a really bad position there. That was just a catch, one step, two step, and then just, got hit by, a 215-pound missile. Really nothing he could have done about it, but I think it is fair to say that Juju opens himself up for this criticism and sort of that target on his back with what he does. I know he said in the past that he's not going to change who he is. A lot of me believes that he is where he is because of who he is too. So I don't necessarily want him to change it. But when it comes to disrespecting the opponents, I feel like that is a line that, we'll see if Tomlin has a conversation with him. I'm all for Juju having fun and being himself and, being confident in himself. But the minute it gets, to the other, to the opposing team, they may take offense to that. And that's not doing his team any favors.
Yeah, I agree with what you guys said. It really wasn't – he did it against Dallas, and even the Cowboys players took offense to it at the time. You remember he scored a touchdown, and he was running towards the star, and Randy Gregory knocked the ball out of his hand. And, so they knew about it too. But it didn't really become a big issue until the Bills game. And Bills players talked about it after the game. They said that, that fired them up and everything. So at that moment, I think Juju should have just stopped doing it. Instead, he goes to the media and says, I'm not going to stop doing it. I want to be me. I want to be my authentic self. And really then it becomes a bigger media story. And then, he does it against the Bengals, and he only has 3 receptions for 15 yards, and he has a crucial fumble that ultimately ended up in a touchdown for the Bengals on their drive after that. So, I mean, and you're right about Ben's pass. He didn't set up Juju well there. And Vonn Bell, who took issue with what Juju dancing on team's logo. So, he said before the game, they're going to hit him, and that's what he did. He hit Juju, and it went all over social media, just like how Juju got embarrassed. Really, to be honest, that's how it looked. Along with the loss to the Bengals.
Yeah, I'm not I'm not hating on Juju. That's the reason I love Juju is he's himself. He's very vocal about, being himself. And it's just, that's just kind of where the line crosses with me. It's just kind of like, it's just too much. But, this is my earliest memories of Juju, joining the Steelers was the bike story. And, that was just a really cool story. And then you kind of learn more about him from there. And he gives back. And it's so cool to see that. And then it's to kind of see this and the statement to the media where you've kind of dug yourself in a hole now. It's just kind of like, it's just kind of like enough, especially after we start losing.
He should have been, not as stubborn really, and just been like, yeah, I didn't really think it was a big issue, but obviously, Bills players took offense to it, but, I didn't mean it in that way. I won't be doing it from here on out. But instead, he has to like be defensive about and say like, oh, I'm going to be my authentic self. And still does it and everything, spikes the ball on their logo. It just like, it's, he might not mean it this way, but it comes off as really cocky and he didn't perform well. I mean, like I mentioned, like 3 receptions for 15 yards. I mean, it's not even like when Ty mentioned this, I think it was Ty, like you mentioned how like, he's not Terrell Owens who's a way better player than Juju and, did this stuff where he danced on, or he tried to at least, he tried to do the pose on the star, but I mean,
he did it. He did it.
Yeah, he did it.
He did it once, but and he got blown up by a Cowboys defensive back.
He got blown.
I can't remember.
Yes, yeah. So he did do it, but he got blown up back doing it. So I don't know. I just, I know Juju, like he comes from humble backgrounds and like he's a gritty player. He's not afraid to, block and do the dirty work. But like I don't know. Like I won't say he's a diva. I think he's just too much into his brand and. I think it's catching up to him in some ways.
Final statement about this before we move on. I have no problem with him being a benevolent TO. I have no problem with him going to logos and stuff like that. I have no problem with the extravagant touchdown dances. It's why I became a fan. It's why I love the 2000s wide receivers the most. It's like I can name you every single wide receiver in the 2000s, and most of them did some outlandish stuff as they scored touchdowns and stuff like that. You want to know what they did the most? They went out there on the field and they put up 8 receptions games, most likely over for 100 yards and a couple touchdowns out there. And Juju is not giving that. I have no problem with that if you back it up. And Juju Smith-Schuster has not backed it up. That's the only problem I have with this.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you. I do want to say one thing about Juju and basically his usage in the offense is I think he built up his brand, and the reason why he is so popular that he is right now is not only because of his on-field work but off-the-field work, but he was noticed because of his 2017 and 2018 years, alongside AB and the production that he had. So he was producing there. And I do think that there's something to be said about the type of player he is and can be, and also his usage in this offense. We're kind of treating him like he's this like 36-year-old wide receiver, who can only catch a little 5-yard in and then stumble forward for a couple more yards. He's still 23 years old, maybe. Yeah. I do think that he does have the talent. I'm not saying that any of you guys are wrong about saying that he should tone it down. I think I definitely agree with you there, but I definitely think that we are missing some opportunities, with our usage with Juju as well too, though.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Randy could use Juju better. I think, on some deeper routes, maybe, as we mentioned, Ben hasn't been playing as well, but just overall Juju, his most yards he had in the game this year is 93 yards. Like, I mean, that could be just the scheme and everything, but like, that's not good. Like, he hasn't had a game over 100 yards all year. When like you look back in 2018 and everything, like he was doing that continuously.
What I saw kind of on Twitter, this kind of last night, just, overreactions from people. It's like, they're just like, it looks like he's just running the same route every time. And that's kind of what it looks like. He's always kind of one of those short inside routes. It's like they're trying to make him Ben's security blanket. And, I mean, that's kind of what he needs sometimes, but, when it just doesn't seem like Ben's getting him to the ball in the right positions, or, he's just not getting open. I don't know. But there were definitely some situations where all the receivers were open last night, and Ben was kind of just looking on the other side of the field. That could be play calling. That could be Ben. You don't really got to dive into that. But I definitely agree that he's definitely not getting used to his full potential right now by the Steelers offense.
We kind of covered a lot of the offense over this time, so we'll kind of like pick this up a little faster. Final thoughts on the offense. I want to get your guys' takes on the receivers day. Deontay Johnson led the team in receiving with 8 catches for 59 yards. Most of the other receivers had 3 catches or less. Benny Snell went over 80 yards rushing, and the running attack looked much better, probably the best it's looked all season, probably since the Baltimore game in terms of that, but maybe the Jacksonville game as well, at least for that. So, guys, what's your thoughts on that before we move on to the defense?
I mean, I was just happy to see the running game kind of going a little bit. I know we didn't dive too much into that, but quickly, just I want to give credit to Benny Snell. He started to put his head down and run a little bit. I don't have it pulled up right now, unfortunately, but I think he had like over 80 yards on the ground. So that was pretty good to see, but unfortunately, it wasn't enough really. As to the other running backs, they each only got 1 carry, and that was kind of unfortunate. I feel like they could have been used a little bit more in the game. They just, I don't know. So final thoughts is there's just a lot of improvements that need to be made all around.
Jimmy?
Yeah, definitely a bounce back game for the receivers. And I think it could have been a lot better, if they were getting the balls thrown to them, more efficiently and accurately. So I think there were no drops. So, that's definitely a positive to take away. They were reeling everything that, they could. As Guthrie touched in on, definitely the run game took a step up yesterday. Benny Snell kind of brings a change of pace that, we haven't really seen. He was kind of taking no yard gains and turning it into 3 or 4. There were a couple where he got stopped at the line, reversed the field and then picked up a few first downs, something that we really haven't seen since we had Le'Veon Bell. James Conner's not necessarily that type of back, maybe behind a better offensive line the past few years, he was able to do some of those things, but Snell definitely brought a change of pace that we haven't seen behind this O-line. So that's definitely a positive to take away. And I think just the biggest thing is just going to be from here on out, it's going to be about quarterback play, and can Roethlisberger use the weapons around him, and can Fichtner call the right plays? There were a few big play potential that either Ben missed on or one key block away. One specifically in my mind is a screen pass in the first quarter to Ray. It looked like we were villain the wave of a block away from potentially a big play, possibly even a touchdown. So it's there. It's just, it comes down to execution. We got 2 games to figure this out before it matters the most.
Yeah, I thought Benny Snell Jr. played a fabulous game. He ran hard and it was good in the receiving game as well. I thought, it is the Bengals run defense, nothing great. It'll be interesting to see how they do against the Colts, who rank 5th in rushing and, the best run defense, best run defense in the league, or excuse me, best run defense in the AFC the Colts have. It should be interesting to see if Snell could do that or Connor comes back. But I also think Deontay Johnson played a really good game. He had no drops, and they showed before the game on the broadcast that, he was catching passes from all different angles, working on his hands. I think it was like over 3 hours before the game. So I thought he played really well, and, he was Ben's go-to guy there in the second half. So, definitely a bounce back game. I wish they would have used Claypool a little bit more. It was kind of odd he wasn't on that 4th down play at the end of the game. But, there's still areas, there's still plays to be made. But overall, I thought, they did the best they could consider the way Ben was playing, really.
Yeah, it was a good game for Benny Snell, as you guys have highlighted over there. I noticed that the Steelers started running in different ways. There was a couple plays that went off tackle that actually made a little bit of noise for the Steelers. And again, yes, it is the Bengals run defense, but when you're the 31st ranked run offense in the league, it's got to be up at some point. You just have to take anything that resembles a modern NFL offense as a win. So hopefully it's a building block in a game that wasn't really filled with a lot of building blocks on offense. And I hope to see that the Steelers try to at least have more outside runs, maybe try a toss play, sweep, anything that allows their running backs to get outside. And maybe if these wide receivers are going to be physical and, just like take these like 5-yard catches and kind of power their way to first downs, if the Steelers wideouts are showing power, why not try to see if they can block on some of these plays? I mean, worst case scenario, it's just like every other run that the Steelers have had, and it's blown up for a 5-yard loss, and you're well behind schedule. Do any of you guys agree with my sentiment? Maybe the Steelers should try more outside runs?
Yeah, I definitely agree with it. We've seen that Juju obviously can block. Claypool's had some nice blocks this year. It definitely can't hurt, Clearly this run game isn't working. I'd like to see a little bit more McFarland. I think that he brings a change of pace that, we haven't seen in a while. I think that, when he has had his touches, he's done some good things. He's had a couple plays where he's broken through the line. He's had a couple plays where he broke through and lost his footing a couple times. But I think an increased role for McFarland and kind of, I know Tomlin doesn't like to do that multiple backfield, but I do feel like in a time like this where there is just little to no running game, little things like that, like you said, going outside more, a little more east and west. You don't want to get crazy with it, but, like you said, something as simple as a toss play, just a stretch run, something that we just don't see really. What's going to happen, if you don't gain yards on it, would have been the same if you ran it up the middle too.
And please, no more shotgun runs. I understand that shotguns are not the 7 steps away from the line of scrimmage they used to. They're more shorter. They're more like 5 or something like that. But man, a pistol offense run right now would be like heaven for me right now. It's the closest thing to single back there is. I mean, it at least creates, a running start for the running backs. Just largely anything that isn't a shotgun run, it's just annoying at this point.
Yeah. Last thing I'll say, I guess, before we move on, it's like, those weeks where we didn't have Derek Watt, it's like we didn't have anybody else on the roster to do a nice shotgun run, and a pistol run. It's just I wish we had somebody in that spot. Like that's where James Conner does best, and I'm sure Benny Snell might benefit a little bit. Just let him hit the hole, let him go outside. Just have some extra help. Let him get that running start. I think that would be huge. And I think it sucks that we're not going to be able to have that. If Watt misses more time.
While we've been talking about blocking, we might as well talk about that as well. I think this is the first time that I've actually seen this account, the Renegade Blitz, actually kind of like call out the offensive line. We talked about Sarah, and Chris, you even tweeted out about Alejandro Villanueva, and our friend Chris Carter said, I wonder if there's blocking techniques that could be sent to flip phones. I mean,
oh really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't see that tweet by Carter, but man, that was a rough game by Villanueva. Carl Lawson had a sack and he had 6 quarterback hits. That just shows, and that was pretty much all on Villanueva too. He was put on roller skates. He struggled the first game too when they played in week 10. And I've never really been high on Villanueva. I mean, I think he's a decent pass blocker. I never thought of him to be a great run blocker. He struggles with certain types of pass rushers. And Carl Lawson's a really good player. He's kind of underrated. And we kind of highlighted that during the preview podcast that, like, he's really the Bengals, by far best pass rusher. He had 4.5 sacks coming into the game, but I didn't think Chooks played a good game either. And last week we had Max on, and I asked him, the first thing he said, I asked him about the offensive line. I was like, what are your thoughts on the offensive line? And his first thing was like, yeah, I'm not a big fan of Chooks. And he watches a lot more film than, more than me by a lot. And we saw that with Chooks. He just didn't play well against the Bengals, and he hasn't really been playing good down the stretch. And Hassenauer was kind of like flipping back and forth on series with Derwin Gray at left guard. And I'm not really big on Hassenauer either. I didn't think he looked good. I think if Dotson can't go next week, they should start Derwin Gray at left guard. As far as Pouncey and DeCastro, DeCastro actually played pretty well at first glance. Like he did have that kick out block on Benny Snell Jr.'s 29-yard run. It was a nicely well executed play. But the highlight was really just Villanueva got dominated against Walston. That was just really apparent during the game.
Guys, let's talk about the defense. And really the defense, when you look at it in this game, they just got hung out to dry for those 17 points in the first half, all coming off of turnovers. So it's clear. What's the level of blame do we put on the defense for this game?
I mean, as we mentioned before, like the offense, 3 turnovers in the first half, spotted the Bengals 17 points. They did let them. They let when the Steelers were making a comeback, they gave up that long drive really where the Bengals really just rushed the ball the whole time. I think 65 of their 80 yards were all on run plays, and I mean to let Ryan Finley do that on a read option play, go in for a 23-yard score untouched was pretty embarrassing.
Did anyone even know if Ryan Finley could run? I don't remember.
I didn't know that he could run like that. No, I didn't know. I didn't know they would use him like that as often as they did.
It just felt like something that was kind of like off the wall, and it's like, well, we can't pass the ball because there's no Guthrie. We talked about it. There was that dime to AJ Green, but that was like the one pass I could think of with Finley that went beyond 5 yards or something like that, in which the Bengals didn't have to run after the catch really.
Yeah. Credit to Ryan Finley. Like I said, I think he did just enough to win, and our offense didn't do us any favors. Any favors? I know we spent almost probably an hour on the show talking about the offense. I'm kind of ready to drop it because I just want to talk about this defense. And really, I don't put any blame on this defense. I think they're playing great, like they've done all season. Obviously, there are a couple of mishaps, but I mean, really, like you guys said, 17 points. The offense can't give a team another offense 17 points, and you can't expect to win, and that's where it comes down to. But yeah, Ryan Finley. Just like I said earlier, I just feel like he looked like he was having a lot of fun out there, and he definitely led his team to the victory that night.
Yeah, like Guthrie said, it was a guy who had everything to play for and no pressure on him. And he performed well. I put none of this blame on the Steelers defense. When we needed them most, they weren't able to come through, but there's also, you got to keep in mind, how many times were they called upon to come through for us, that game. Nearly every possession after the first quarter was a must stop possession, and they came through on every single one besides one, really. So, they're out there, the majority of the game. I don't have the time of possession numbers on me, but, felt like first half especially, those guys were getting tired. You're thin at the linebacker position. I don't think that the Bengals have as much success on the ground if we have Vince Williams healthy off of the COVID list. So you got to remember it's hard to stop the run, when you're out, your guys, all of the linebackers that were out now, we're thin there. It's hard to stop the run. Any NFL offense, I don't care who it is, you're still playing against NFL competition. And it just kind of showed at the end of the game. They got worn out. They're a great defense. I think they're the best defense in the league, but even the best can, wear out when you're called upon to do too much, and the offense put them in that situation. So I'm still putting all of that blame on the offense, but we needed them at the end. They weren't able to get the stop, but it's hard to blame them, really.
It reminded me of last year. It's just like, the defense will come through more often than not. You're just expecting something to happen that can make it all worth it for all their stops, and that just didn't happen this game. But we can say this right now: TJ Watt is firmly in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation. I think you might as well give him the trophy right now because he's been the difference even with guys hurt. He's held everywhere. He got his sack that increased the Steelers streak to 71 games now.
Yeah, 71. Yeah.
The fact that he's getting these sacks, and I believe it's the only sack that the Steelers had in this game.
I think they had two.
Two, I think. Yeah.
Two?
Yeah, two. Yeah. I think two.
Hayward had one for, I think, like a 1 yard loss, I think.
Yeah.
It says to it on the stats sheet that you gave.
To it?
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the one issue I kind of tweeted a couple times, like, man, the Steelers really could use a turnover here, and I think that's one area where the defense kind of let the team down. That they could have, but it was tough because the Bengals were running the ball, and like Jimmy mentioned, if they had Vince Williams in there, or any of their healthy linebackers, like I think they would stop the run better. But the Bengals were getting the run game going, and they put Finley in good situations. He only threw the ball 13 times, so it's hard to get turnovers when running backs are holding on to the ball well, and you're not really getting after the quarterback a whole lot. Only 2 sacks. So the Steelers, every game this year except for 3, they haven't forced any turnovers, and 2 of those games have come in the last 3. The other one was against Washington, and obviously both losses, Cincinnati and Washington. So, and it's a little bit concerning. The defense seems a little bit fading a little bit because last week against Buffalo they only had 1 sack as well, and 2 this week. So I don't know. It needs some more splash plays with the defense. I hope they're not getting tired out or they're decimated by injuries. Bud Dupree's a huge loss. They could have used him obviously last night.
Cincinnati got the turnovers, which wasn't expected. And the only time the Steelers really had a chance in terms of getting any turnovers in this game was when Ryan Finley was throwing. And what won the game for the Bengals is when they said, okay, that's enough throwing from Ryan Finley. He's going to run the ball. That's when they won this game. I said it to you, Chris, in between recording our interview for our next podcast, and when you look back at it, it's clearly what won the game for the Bengals, aside from getting out from that lead.
Like you guys have been saying, I think Gio Bernard just gave him really good. He did really well that game. He's been in there for a while. He's definitely a name. I think has been there for a lot of these rivalry games. I mean, it's like what I'm worried about. Even if our defense did get turnovers, is like would our offense be able to even capitalize right now with how they're playing? That would be great. If they did get these, but I still don't think it's all on them. Really, it would be nice, to get a pick 6, but or something like that, or just an interception that puts our offense in good field position. I'm just worried about, if our offense could even do something with that. I definitely think mental fatigue is setting in for this defense and physical fatigue. This with especially the injuries at linebacker. It'll be nice to get some of these guys back for the stretch run.
Yeah, I think to build off of that, once we get Williams back, I think that'll help not only our run stopping, but also our blitzing and our sack numbers.
Yeah,
Williams is one of those, one of the best blitzing linebackers. He's able to. I think he's top 10 in tackles for loss, or at least he was before he went on the COVID list, I believe, in the league. So getting him back will be big, and I think that kind of what Guthrie was saying, how even if the defense does perform, we'll see what the offense can do. It kind of feels like last year where you almost would rather have your defense on the field at times, and so kind of what I alluded to earlier. It's really on this offense. We can only ask so much of the defense. They can't score every game for us. So it's up to this offense to see if we can win a playoff game, see if we can contend with Kansas City. Because as we've seen the past few weeks, they're beatable, but this team can't come close to beating them the way they've played the past few weeks.
It's going to require it's going to require that first half against the Titans and way more to even get close to a team like Kansas City. It's going to be interesting to find out what battle the Steelers have in the playoffs, because I know they have some veterans that have some playoff experience, but when you truly look up and down the Steelers roster, there's not a lot of experience, and that's where you have to sit there and wonder. We've kind of really talked about the running game for Cincinnati, 139 yards on the ground. So a total effort, again, by Cincinnati on the ground really helps out. I know that in the last game against Cincinnati, they had more running backs, but they had 139 yards, and 39 yards of that came off of a fake punt. And there was no fake punt in this game. So how much does this team miss having Bud Dupree and Robert Spillane, especially in the past couple weeks in the run game? Because I remember on Finley's read option touchdown, Alex Highsmith kind of just bit on the handoff. Correct, Chris?
Yeah, he just crashed down on it. Avery Williamson kind of, he bit inside a little bit too, but that was mainly Highsmith's, responsibility on the play. And yeah, I think if Bud was in there, he's a veteran player. He would have made that play. It was just an easy touchdown for Finley, really too. So I mean, Highsmith is a young player. I didn't think he overall played bad, but obviously that play was crucial. But Spillane in the run game, he definitely would have helped also. Devin Bush, just his speed and impact for turnovers. I mean, they're missing some really key guys. I mean, it's obvious, Bud, when you could lose a guy like Bud Dupree and Devin Bush, I mean, that just hurts a lot.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we know what Bud Dupree can do, with his pass rush and everything, but definitely missing him in the run game too. One thing that I was really thinking about yesterday when I saw the read option stuff that Cincinnati was doing was week 8 against Baltimore. Lamar Jackson, one of the best to be able to do that. They tried to get that going. They just couldn't do it because you had Watt breaking it up on the other end. You had Dupree on the other side. There's just no options to do that. You had 2 really high IQ and high ability players that prevented any of that from going on. And now that you only have that on one side, I think to my count, they only ran that option once to TJ's side. I think it was the last one where Minka actually came up and made the tackle. Yeah, I think that was the first time I saw it to Watt's side. I was surprised they went there with it.
Yeah.
But we're definitely missing Dupree to seal that other edge and Spillane filling those gaps. I mean, hopefully we can get a little healthy here, but there's no replacing Bud Dupree, this year especially.
Yeah, that's a really good point there, Jimmy, I'm sure the Bengals coaches knew that too. Like, let's not run this to the Watt side because he knows how to defend that. And they knew Highsmith's a rookie and, why not try it? We're having some success running the ball with Finley and, the Bengals made a good call and they scored on the play. So credit to them. But hopefully Highsmith learns from it and just a tough play there.
I think Bud Dupree, and I know this is kind of off topic. I know we're kind of winding down here. I just think Bud Dupree is a must read. It's really just, based off of what has been missing since he's not here, has really reaffirmed that in my brain. I've kind of been on the train. It's like, oh, let's get back Juju. But, I've realized that our receivers can be, that we're really great at drafting them. But Bud Dupree's really coming to his own these last 2 years, I'd say. And I very much think he's a much re-sign. He really should be re-signed to a new contract after the season.
Yeah, I agree, Guthrie. I said earlier, do whatever they have to do, all costs, try to bring Bud back. I agree with you. I think they could replace Juju. He's probably going to get paid pretty good, by another team that has a lot of cap space and could use a good receiver. Connor is pretty much good as gone. I mean, he's having issues staying healthy and he's not really, he's an okay back, but nothing elite. They could get a better running back in the draft. I don't know about first round, but definitely second round possibly. I think Bud Dupree should be their number one option. I think Villanueva could go. They just need to rebuild the entire offensive line. I know we harped on Villanueva earlier, but I mean, they need a new tight end. They need a tight end like Heath Miller was. So they have a lot of issues this offseason to correct.
Yeah. This whole draft is, a lot of positions are really good. Like running back's pretty good, and tight end looks to be pretty good. I just can't wait to, in the off season, just get some people or me personally try to look at it some more and figure out, some potential replacements for these guys.
Yeah, I think we all covered it with what moves we think that the Steelers should make, and I agree with all of them. There's much more that we can touch on, but I want to make sure that we have these final couple sad questions before we try to end this on a brighter note like we've had for the last couple weeks. And guys, so to finish it up real quick, do you feel that the Steelers are mentally drained? Do you feel like all this stuff that has just happened between the injuries, the COVID moves, this doesn't seem like a team that came through against Tennessee and basically said, we're just going to smack you in the mouth in the first first 30 minutes and maybe hang on. It's not the smartest thing, but at least from that Tennessee game on, it really feels like it's been a different team in a lot of ways.
Man, I think the mental fatigue is definitely setting in. It's very much setting in for me right now. So I can't even imagine how it feels for those guys. This long, grueling season, getting tested every single day. It's definitely, I think, it takes a really tough individual, and I think a lot of these guys are tough individuals to fight through this adversity. And we'll learn a lot about the team in the next couple of weeks, and I'm excited to learn more about them.
Yeah, I think. Injuries and the mental aspect. I know that there's a big deal made out of 3 games in 12 days, but I've kind of noticed this team not being as good as like the record indicated all the way back to the Cowboys game, really. And I know, you give every team like one bad game. They ended up winning it, but they played great against Cincinnati the first time, and then even though they beat Jacksonville 27-3, I saw issues there too in that game. Then you have the Ravens game where it just started to become really apparent, and then you kind of give them the benefit of the doubt. It was a weird week. The game got postponed 3 times, but I don't know. They've shown some issues all year, and it's really starting to come through. And now they're losing with not playing complete games. And I definitely think the injuries are catching up. But as we mentioned, with not having Bud and Devin Bush, and then just the issue with Roethlisberger is really concerning. Along with Randy, I don't think Randy's the best offensive coordinator out there, but you can't really blame Randy though when Ben's just not putting the ball where it needs to be. So hopefully Ben can get his game together. Or, if they lose out, there's going to be they're going to have to change a lot. Who knows what's going to happen with Ben? A couple assistant coaches might be fired, or they should be fired. Really, if they lose 6 straight games, Randy could be out. Sean Sarah, as we mentioned, they were so high on him when they hired him, everybody from the media and everything. And I'm not the one to really analyze position coaches, but I mean, what have you guys thought about? Do you think Sarah's the issue, or do you think they just need to draft better linemen?
Refer to what I said last week about position coaches with the Steelers. I think there should be wholesale changes, really, and not only personnel but also coaching. And Jimmy, I wanted to get your take on, do you believe that the Steelers are mentally tired?
I think, definitely my answer would be yes. Exactly why that is. Is it the early bye week? Is it, the, games in close succession to each other? Who exactly knows the reason, but I do believe that we're looking at a mentally and physically tired and worn team. I do believe that this stretch run, now that the AFC North title is up for grabs again, hopefully that'll inject a little bit of life into them. If it doesn't, I think there's a larger organizational problem, with this team. But, we'll definitely see. As of right now, they definitely are mentally tired, though.
Sorry about that. Well, we'll find out what goes on with the Steelers in these last 2 games that are very critical towards playoff positioning and potentially winning this division. So guys, all right, so we've had a ton of doom and gloom. It's time to think about something happy to end this podcast with us, and it's Christmas week, guys, so I'm interested to hear, what's your favorite Steelers or football related Christmas gift that you've ever gotten? A happy thing is getting gifts, and it's largely Steelers stuff. And as we're all fans of the Steelers, I'm just interested to hear, and football in general, I'm just interested to hear what you guys have gotten over the years. So we'll start with Jimmy.
Yeah, so mine's definitely one looking back, may not sound as great as it once was, but it was 2016 Christmas morning. I opened up an Antonio Brown jersey, and, favorite player at the time. I think he was really everyone's favorite player at the time. and so excited to wear it and watch that game and that finish. Just a perfect day, a perfect present for that day. So that's something that I'll never forget. I know a lot of people got rid of their jerseys. I held on to the jersey just for that moment and what that moment meant. He gave a lot to the Steelers. It didn't end well, but I'm still glad that we get to hold on to that division title, that game, those memories. I remember that was just a really good Christmas present, Christmas experience, something that I'll always be able to look on, fondly, despite what happened after.
Yeah, I agree. It's the same with me with the AB jersey. I got that, probably a year before you. I'm never going to get rid of a jersey, especially when they're like, however many hundreds of dollars, probably like $100 or so. It's like why would you go and burn it no matter what? And that memory, exactly, I felt the same way. Like I thought about it, but I'm like, yeah, no, I can't. But probably my favorite thing was, getting a TJ Watt jersey a couple years ago, just because he's kind of my favorite player now. That's probably one of my highlights, or like I kind of tiny model of Heinz Field. Like that was kind of cool too.
Probably my best Steelers Christmas gift. It probably just over the years, a lot of the jerseys, but the one that really stands out is Ben Roethlisberger's jersey. I was 10 at the time, so it was rookie year. Roethlisberger was like the biggest thing out there, right? At the time, really for the Steelers. A young quarterback, and he was undefeated at the time. So I'll probably have to go with that one. Also, like Heinz Ward jersey. I have a signed Heinz Ward football, but that wasn't during Christmas. But that's probably like my most favorite Steelers item I have.
Jimmy, thanks for coming on. It was a little gloomy episode. It's been like that the past couple of weeks. I wanted to make sure you had a good experience with that last question. And happy holidays. And, of course, thank you for everything you do with the RenegadeBlitz.com and coming on the podcast today.
Yeah, thank you guys. This was a lot of fun. I hope to do it again. Happy holidays to you guys too. Obviously I wish this podcast was a little bit lighter, as you said. I was thinking about that when watching. I was hoping to be talking about good things rather than bad things, but it was still fun to sort of dissect what happened yesterday. And I'm excited for the rest of the season. And I know a lot of Steelers fans don't have hope, but I do have a little bit of hope that Ben can be Ben. Maybe he doesn't have to even be Ben. Maybe he could just be an average quarterback, point guard back there. I do believe that we can get things back on track and put up a run. So, I'll be in contact with all of you guys as we all see if that happens.
The busy week still continues for us here on the Renegade Blitz podcast. We'll have Matt Taylor, the play-by-play voice of the Indianapolis Colts, on to talk Steelers versus Colts, our preview episode. And that's all for us now. For Chris Ward, Guthrie Rasmussen, Jimmy Spizzirri, Max Rosenfeld, Luke Sawhook, and our fearless leader, Zach Napolitano, I'm Ty Polk. Happy holidays, and thank you for tuning in to the Renegade Blitz. Thank you for listening to the Renegade Blitz podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Renegade Blitz, read articles on RenegadeBlitz.com, and like us on Facebook. Our podcast is available on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Stitcher, YouTube, iHeart, and Spotify.